Okay, so here we are in training 2. In this training, we're going to pick up where we left off last training. So really, we're going to start with for a little bit on advanced opportunities, and the only thing there we're really going to cover is how they're different from basic in terms of scheduling. So we're just going to cover the scheduling piece. We will then, since we will then talk about communications. Is usually the next topic that we cover from there. So communications with volunteers and organizations. We will then discuss partners, so organizations and how to manage them. And then if we have time, reports. Otherwise, we can move on to other topics, but that should take up our full hour when we get all those together. So unlike the first training, which we basically focused entirely on one thing, this one's going to be a little bit more diverse. So let's get going.
Great.
So advanced opportunities, without going into, I guess I can't really avoid how they're different and but without getting a definition, they just have a few differences from basic in that we can now do more advanced scheduling. That's the main big difference between them, and that's what we're going to cover here. As part of covering that scheduling, one thing to point out is now we don't do scheduling on page 1, we now do it on page 3. And we now can have multiple locations for our opportunity. So this is actually an example from a United Way, their Earn It, Keep It, Save It tax program. So they do have multiple locations. Scheduling and shift, that's our new page. That's the only thing that we really need to worry too much about with advanced. And this is where we're going to do more advanced scheduling. So with our basic, we remember we had one time, which is day of kind of events, and we had ongoing, which are more nebulous kind of time span things. With our advanced, we now have options for weekly, which is the most common, monthly, and other. So what we do with our scheduling is much like we did with basic, but more complex. We set the schedule for a location, i.e. when is that location available, and then we set the shifts, i.e. when do people actually show up on, say, a given day or time period. So weekly is the most common. So we could, for example, say, okay, at SoCo Nexus, on a weekly basis from this date to this date, let's do that actually. Let's make a year. There you go. For a year, we will have volunteers showing up on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Now, we're not saying when they show up, but we're just saying that we will have volunteers on these days. We can put date exceptions to handle things like holidays. Otherwise, we can go ahead and hit save. For the monthly option, same idea, but we're actually specifying the day of the month. And the other option is for day by day erratic schedules. So I can do Tuesday this week, skip 2 weeks, then do a Thursday, skip a week, then do Thursday and Friday that week, then the week after that do Saturday. So it's basically when things are erratic. And then each one of those days can have its own set of shifts. But as mentioned, weekly is the most common. So let me set that back to a year. So 1 week year, Tuesday through Thursday, save. Now, what we do is we start creating our shifts. So these are the times that volunteers will actually show up. And this is where things can get really fun. So your shift name should be very descriptive. Basically, it lets you or the volunteer, if they're scheduling themselves, know exactly what they're signing up for. So on in this case, I have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as my days. I might call this the weekday morning shift, and this is all this would be a case where someone could sign up for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 9 to noon. Or I might call it the Monday shift, in which case they're only signing up for Mondays for some time period. So we get a lot of flexibility here, and so you can be broad, say it's all weekdays, or you can be granular, it's only Monday. Let's do Monday. Monday morning. So we then say, oh, excuse me, not Monday. We didn't do Monday. We did Tuesday. Tuesday morning. Isn't that a thrift shop? I think it is. Tuesday morning. It is a thrift shop, at least locally. Tuesday morning. Says happens on Tuesday from 9 a.m. till noon. Nope, that's 10. Bad Eric. Go back. There we go. Noon o'clock. So, and then we say what positions. So we talked about this last time. Positions are a way to break down an opportunity into different jobs. So for our tax preparation program here, opportunity, we need a greeter, tax helpers, interpreters, yep, I spelled that wrong, and site coordinator. And then we can say the maximum we need of each. Now, currently, this doesn't actually do much more than be a reference, um, but is, I think, some work underway to actually enforce these limits. So I need one person to be a greeter, 4 tax helpers, us doing 1 interpreter because we don't get too many people speaking not speaking English, and just 1 site coordinator. Only one person needs to manage this. So this is our shift. And then we can save and add new. I'm gonna go ahead and save. And we will find our schedules and shifts over here on the right as soon as my computer refreshes. There we go. So SoCo Nexus actually has 2 schedules that's permitted. One actually ended. Oh, whoa, that should be over. Oh, whatever, ignore it. And so here's the one we just created and the shift that we created. And then we could do Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, Tuesday afternoon, so on and so forth. Or we could do a weekday afternoon that spans multiple days, or we could not have a Wednesday afternoon, we might just have Tuesday and Thursday. Whatever you need, they can overlap, there can be gaps, a lot of flexibility. Any questions on scheduling?
You mentioned that currently the number of volunteers required is not enforced in the system, so what if it exceeds how many someone's asking for? What happens to those volunteers if they're not necessarily needed in a role?
Nothing currently. So it's really up to you. Yeah, it's something that's being worked on to actually enforce those. Currently, it will allow someone to continue to sign up, and then you'll have the option to say, yeah, I do want them. No, I don't want them. You can go beyond what you stated you needed. Um, on But currently, it's not gonna. It's more for your reference than anything else.
So they don't automatically wait list or anything
No,
like that. It's really
no
incumbent
wait.
on the
Correct, and that's
organization.
yeah. There's no waitlist functionality at this time, which is what part of is the other side of the enforcement is also a request for waitlist functionality
Right.
from another hands-on organization.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right, and that's advanced opportunities. That's really the difference between basic and advanced, is just this advanced scheduling piece. This is the same scheduling piece, by the way, used when you're creating your orientations and trainings. I can't remember if we talked much about that last time, but with orientations and trainings, when you want to say when your sessions are, you're basically just setting up schedules like you would here. So.
And I did have a question on the orientations and trainings. Where do those, are those ours specifically?
Yes, they're yours specifically.
Okay, then never mind.
Although your agencies can post theirs to your public calendar, I believe that was implemented just last month.
Gotcha.
Okay. Alrighty, so now that we have schedules, it's time to actually manage volunteers, which I forgot to mention in the intro. That was a really important thing to forget to mention. So our next piece that I forgot to mention, I'm gonna give myself a hard time on that one, is the actual scheduling process for volunteers. So this is not too complex, and it's gonna start in one of 2 ways. So the basic flow is volunteers apply, they go through certain steps. By the end of that process, they've been scheduled, and they're starting to show up and you're logging their hours. What we're going to go through is what that process entails and the different ways to log hours. So the first place it can start is how is the volunteer assigned to the opportunity? And this happens in one of 2 ways. And then from there, the processes come back together. Process number 1, they go onto your public pages, your public site, they find the opportunity, they create an account. Oop, I don't want to close that one. There we go. They create an account and they apply for the opportunity. Thus, they will be assigned to the opportunity or go to awaiting approval, which we'll talk about, and you will process them from there. So that's kind of, we're not going to, how we can go through that process. We have time at the end, but let's focus on your side of things. The other way is you can manually assign them. So they've registered an account, they're in your system, you know about them, and you're going to say, you know what, Bob Smith, he's a good match there. So what we can do is we can go to an opportunity, so we don't matter which one. Let's pick this one because it's not as used. And we can either click the plus button here or assign volunteer. Click on that. And we get to choose our volunteer. So Bob Smith, I have one. And assign volunteer. So Bob Smith was already in the system. If I do somebody who's not in the system, because that guy has just called me, Jesse Bronson, not his actual last name, doesn't exist in my system. He doesn't come up. If I click out, it will ask me, it'll prompt me to add Jesse Bronson to the system, put in his email, hit save. I don't feel like adding an email at this time. And now he exists in my system, and I can go assign volunteer. So, and then close out, and I'll notice that my volunteer list has gone to 3. If they came on through the website, there is the option to require that they be vetted by you. So if you did use that option, there's still one more step before those online people are actually added to the list. You will find that they've been added to a volunteer awaiting approval list. We can click on the number. We'll see that Cassie here is awaiting approval, and I can approve or reject her. There's also the ability to run a background check. We haven't really talked too much about that. It's an add-on feature with verified volunteers. You need an account with them, but you can push her record to them to be verified, and then they'll take her through the process of verification. You'll get the results. If you want more about that, we can talk about that later, but let's keep it simple for now. If you did not put an application form, and we'll see how to do that. And we saw how to do that already in the last training. If you did not put an application form on the opportunity, when you hit approve, it will be an instant approval. If you did put an application form, when I hit approve, it's going to prompt me, do I actually want to review that form, which you probably do. I will hit yes, and instead of being an instant approve, I will actually be able to review the form, at which point I can make updates and save them. So she's missing a lot of information. I've apparently updated the form since she applied. I can save and approve, these are required fields, so it will make me fill them out, or reject and back. So this is, I'm actually going to review the form before I reject it. I am going to not do any of those at this time, so I can keep that as an example. Any questions about about up until this point?
No, not for me.
Okay, cool. Yeah, to this point, all we're doing is going through those steps needed to get the volunteer into the opportunity. Once they're added onto the opportunity, that's when we start, depending on our configuration settings, start having more tasks that we may have to do. So let's take a look at our volunteers and see what our next steps are. So we can either click on the number or manage volunteers, which is what I'll use right now. With this, which will take us to a screen of the list of all of our volunteers. So here we have 3, Bob Smith, Cassie, and Jesse. In the next step column, we will be told what our next steps are. And in fact, I'm actually going to switch to my other opportunity because it's got all the steps turned on. So actually, I want that one instead. There we go. So this opportunity has everything turned on. So that way we get to see the most complex sequence. So if we have everything turned on, the following is true. The volunteer opportunity had an application form, thus they had to fill it out. They require approval, which we saw how that works. They will also have to go to an orientation or training before they can be scheduled. And so we saw how you can select that orientation or training. We also have talked a little bit how to create those. And then we also allow them to schedule themselves and log their own hours. Well, those last two don't affect us per se. So at this point, our volunteers have already made it to the list, so they've already gone through the approval process. They've already filled out their application forms and all that. So our next step is to say, yeah, they're going to go to an orientation. And we're going to tell the system what orientation they're going to go to. This part, by the way, can also be managed from orientations and trainings on a per orientation basis. From here, we're doing it per volunteer in the opportunity. So Marissa Hall here needs to go to an orientation. So we're going to say, okay, we're going to click on her next step of pending orientation and training and say, yeah, she's going to go to the general volunteer orientation at this location. At this, this is the session she's going to do, the morning session, i.e. a shift, and she's going to specifically do it, or did do it, on the 1st, let's say, and save. Now if we go to, let's close this out. Now if we went into the orientation and training for that day, we'd see her listed, as well as everybody else who is going to that, and those may be people from different orientations, different opportunities. And once she goes, we have two ways we can say, yeah, she showed up. One, and this is actually my recommended way, is do it from the orientation itself. Go into this the calendar view, and you can see people signed up for a given day, and you can do everybody all at once, regardless of what opportunity they're coming from. It's a great post orientation way to do it, and you can get everybody approved at once. That's my recommended way. If you do want to continue doing it from this screen, though, it's not a problem, and we'll see that they're now pending attendance. And we just go in here and say pending attendance. Did they show up? Yes, they did. Save. Close. And now in the orientation, it will say, yeah, they've attended it. Any opportunity that requires that orientation will now know that they have gone, and we won't have to do that again. So one fun fact with orientations, once they've gone to an orientation, the system remembers that, and any opportunity that uses that orientation won't make them redo it. Unless it's a different opportunity orientation, you make like orientation 1 and 2 for different years, then that's a different orientation. Any questions so far? I know I'm going quite quickly. I just want to make sure we're good.
And this is essentially what an organization is seeing on their side, correct?
Correct. Everything I'm covering right now is the same as what an organization sees. The one difference is they're pushing to your public site, not their own. But beyond that,
Right.
it is all the same. Correct.
And on that note, if someone doesn't push to our site and associate, that the stuff's just in limbo, correct?
I don't want to say for your meaning, correct. I don't want to use the word limbo because it is still there. They can still use the opportunity, and if they were a paid account, they could post to their own public page. So I don't want to say limbo, but
if they're associated with us and their account comes through the VAC, then they're technically in limbo unless they're paid directly to Friendly Connect, right?
Correct. Yeah. So your understanding is correct. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm just fussing about the term.
Yeah. Because I just thought, well, if someone created something and didn't post, they can't really do anything with it unless they were a standalone paid account through Friendly Connect.
That's where the limbo term was incorrect, because they could still manually add volunteers to the opportunity, and they could still log hours manually on the back end. There's just no website portion. So they wouldn't be getting volunteers through the website. Volunteers couldn't sign themselves up for orientations. So it all becomes a manual process as opposed to, the opportunity being lost to the ether, in limbo.
I guess that's an interesting thing. So if I know that I have a specific opportunity, that I have certain people that are already doing that,
yes,
and I know that they will continue doing that, then theoretically I could create that opportunity but not associate it so that I can still manage it and populate it?
Correct. Absolutely. That's what that means.
But then the VAC gets no record of that activity, though, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So you could consider those private opportunities that the organization is managing internally and is not doing anything with you, is not putting anything online. So that would, that's probably the better way to think about it than limbo.
Gotcha.
Because they can still do it. And limbo implied that they couldn't do anything, but they can still do stuff with it, and very useful things with it too.
Gotcha. Okay.
Cool. Alrighty. So once they've actually gone to their orientation or training, the next step is that we schedule them. And why is she saying that? I probably add her to a bulk schedule feature, which means she already had a schedule. Let me see here if I can use Harry Kana as a. Let me try something here real quick. I did something funny. Actually, let me just use a different opportunity. Different examples, different opportunities for different examples. Okay, so we're gonna have to move away from Marissa for a moment and use my other opportunity. Okay, so once they have attended an orientation or training, if that's required, the next step is that they be scheduled. And basically that's just saying when are they going to show up. Now, if we allow them to do it themselves, they can do it through their public profile. So they'd log into their account, go to their dashboard, and they would have a screen similar to this, where there'd be a section that says My Opportunities, and they'd see the opportunity name as opposed to their name, and their next step column, and they can communicate with you. They will, under the next step, have a scheduling option. If they click on that and they're allowed to, they will get a screen similar to this, where they say where they want to volunteer, the shift, the position, and depending on the configuration, they will specify, the time and the date and times. So in this case, it's a 1 day, so they're not specifying anything about the date. If this opportunity had been for more than 1 day, I would have the opportunity to say I only want to do it on Tuesdays as opposed to Tuesday and Thursday, or I'm only going to do it on certain days, and then they can say they are going to do it, or you're going to say they do it from this time to this time. They can change these defaults. So it's going to default to the complete shift and schedule that they chose, but they can, or you can, modify it.
Okay, and Courtney's having trouble with her audio, so she's asking me to ask you, how do you change schedules for existing opportunities? So this would be for opportunity side,
So they're
where
already
you already have
scheduled.
people attached to them.
So
You
you
know what
want
I
to,
mean? Like if I had,
oh, so if I already have a, all day shift, but people are assigned to it, and I need to change the all day shift to be a different date range, how do I do that?
yeah, if I have people already attached to that, how do I do that?
I know we've got some changes coming out on this because people are getting themselves in trouble, but it would be going to our opportunities. So this is going back to our previous topic. Um, and basically you just edit the opportunity. Come on.
Yeah, you need to get some more bandwidth here.
I
It's a little
know.
slow.
It's my demo server combined with the poor internet in the office. That sometimes happens. But edit, and then this is a basic opportunity. But basically, you would just edit the schedule the same way you had created it. So let me go back to my advanced one actually and use that one instead because it's more fun. So edit, schedule shift, click. There we go. And I can edit.
And then does it notify the volunteers that are signed up or what?
Not at this time, so that's where we'd get into the communication piece that we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Okay, okay,
Okay, cool.
okay.
So before we go ahead, now that we've gone back, let's go ahead again, and then we'll
I'm sure
keep
that
going.
answered it.
Okay, cool. Alrighty. Where was I? So you saw scheduling. Um, the next piece is logging hours, and we've got a couple of options for this. The most basic one is just from Next Steps. If they can this is the same screen that a volunteer would get from their account, but basically you say, which opportunity, assignment am I going to log hours for? Because they may have multiple. This is why it's important to make sure your shifts have distinct names, because here I have two called All Day, and she's
Mm-hmm.
assigned to both of them. They may even be the same one. Um, so this is kind of a weird example, but anywho. And then you say, and so this is a 1 day opportunity. So there's just this 1 day, and you just say your hours and save. Nothing too fancy there. If there was an opportunity that had many days, then I get a list of days. And that's how you and the volunteer can both log your hours. But that's only one of 3 options. So let's go for the next one, which is my recommended one for you as an admin. And with this option, we go to, let's see, what was the day of this opportunity? It was the 26th, I think. Anyway, so we go to attendance, and we pick our day, which I think was back on the 28th. Was it the 28th? Oh, come on. What day was it, Eric? Hold on. It helps when you remember your own examples. I don't normally use this opportunity for my example, but I needed it for scheduling. So let me go back to, sorry to jump around so much from one opportunity to another. Um, Normally I
It's
just
good for
always
us.
use this one, but I used up all my examples recently on this one, so I need to put more in. Um, okay, so attendance is a better one anyways. And you pick your day. So, you know, I think we should have people on that day. No? Huzzah. Okay, cool. So we pick our day that we want to, log hours for, and we're going to see all of our people who were scheduled that day. And we can just simply go check in. And this does two things. One, it says they did show up that day. And two, it will go, okay, if they were scheduled from 1 to 4, that's 3 hours. Bam, record 3 hours for that day. So it does two pieces for us. It logs their hours into the opportunity and says they showed up. We can also say, no, they were a no-show. Cassie, tisk, tisk, tisk. Didn't show up. And neither did Gary. And so what this additional piece of information gets us is, so we're looking at the bigger picture sometime. And we put running a report and we say, okay, Cassie has 52 hours. Well, that sounds pretty good. 52 hours, not bad. But then we look at her attendance record and we see, well, she's got maybe 4 attendances and 17 no-shows. So yeah, when she shows up, she works for a really long time, and or maybe she's it's a longer time period. Maybe it's 10 attendances and 15 no-shows. But that's still over 50% no-show rate. So that
Gotcha.
attendance information lets us see that, 70 hours, 50 hours looks good. But then when you look at it in the bigger picture, yeah, that 70 hours is spread over a year and they don't show up half the time. That's not necessarily a volunteer I want. So that's the joy of this attendance feature, is that you not just get the hours, you actually get the long-term data of, are they actually showing up? So
Gotcha.
So that's my recommended for you mechanism for recording hours. Um, However, it's if you're having your volunteers record hours, you're not going to necessarily have attendance information for them. But that's fine. You also won't have them as no-shows either. It's just they have hours. The third way, and it's a bit more indirect. There is a feature, I don't have it on my account, called, but you do. You have it on yours, I'm pretty certain. Time It. And what this gives you is a portal. So you log in, usually you want to make a user account specifically for Time It. You log in, then close the other browser, and you can leave this up on a tablet, laptop, what have you. And tablets are great because it works really nice with the touchscreen. And they can go, okay, I'm an individual. I'm going to enter my PIN code, which they should know. This is the opportunity. Clock me in. And then when they're done, they do the same thing, clock out. And if I showed up between 1:30 and 2:30, the system goes, that's an hour, logs an hour, and, ooh, that's not the right thing. Where's my window? I have too many windows. Okay, that's not the one I want either. That's the one I want. And under, let me go back here. Here we go. And then those hours will get logged as unverified, and then you can review them and say, yeah, these are all legit. And so you can do it individually, or you can do it from the previous our opportunity screen and do it you get the opportunity as a whole.
Gotcha.
So bit of an overview on that piece, but cool feature. Um, if you want more details, we can talk about the actual implementation of this feature, which I believe you do have.
We do not have it now,
Oh,
but
you
we
don't? Oh, I
would.
thought you did. Okay, I see every feature, and for some reason I thought I saw it on your account, your contract, but I may be thinking about somebody else. So, okay, cool. And that's effectively managing volunteers. A couple other tidbits is we can review their hours. We can edit, view, and delete them from a shift. So this is how we can edit their shift. Let's go back. If we click on verified hours, we can actually review their hours. And I do have a request in to be able to delete hours, although currently you could just set it to 0. But there's been a request to actually have a delete button. So just keep that in mind. Okay. We can remove a volunteer from an opportunity. We can add location, which we'll put aside what that's used for right now. We can also add additional schedules to them. So if you had multiple locations on different days, you could have one person working multiple locations on those different days, whatever you need to do. So as complex as your opportunity scheduling can be as complex as theoretically a volunteer's scheduling could be.
Gotcha.
And that's that. That is managing the volunteers. Our next topic is communications. Any questions?
Not yet.
All right. It's still too hot. Okay. Um, so let's do communications. So there are a couple of pieces for communications. We're going to talk about the inbox in a little bit, but let's talk about the bulk communication feature, which comes in two flavors. Actually, you want to think about it, it's almost three flavors for you. There is the per opportunity bulk communications, where we go communicate, and we can send a bulk email to all potential, everybody who has an email basically volunteers in this opportunity. So if someone doesn't have an email, we can't email them obviously. If they do, we'll email theoretically all 9 people. The other option is basically the same functionality, but it's called newsletter, and it can also then be sent to every volunteer in your system or every organization or subsets therein. Now, because it can be volunteers and orgs, that's why it's almost 3 pieces. That's why I kind of said it's kind of a third also. But let's run through them. So we're going to really only run through it once, and then I'll point out the differences when we get to newsletter, when we look at newsletter. So for EKS, I'm going to go ahead and go communicate, and our first step is to say what we're sending out. So this is where we give our communication a name. This is for internal purposes. So reminder email. Our sender name, so that's us as an organization. So that'd be the name of your organization. Monte Cristo Arts Center is what I always use for my demos. And then the sender email, if they hit reply to this email, where is it going to go? So this would probably be your email or like an info at email. So I'm just going to go ahead and put mine, eric.metzler@fundly.com. For our purposes here, we cannot change this recipient type option. When we do newsletters, since we can send also to organizations, we would have organizations as an option here. And our subject, remember stuff. I don't know. Okay, paperwork. I always do this one, paperwork. Everybody's always paperwork. So this is our, email subject, sender info, and then we pick a template. So basically, if you've ever used MailChimp, it's very similar. We pick the template, and this is our content. We can create new templates from here, or we can create them from My Templates. When we look at the editor for those templates, let's do that really quickly. It's fairly simple to use. I'll give you a very quick, less than 5-minute overview for time purposes. So it's basically a what you see is what you get editor. We have these sections, widgets we call them. You can edit, copy, and delete. This is where we would name our newsletter, give it a code and a name, the template. And you can use the same template for different communications. That's why they're templates. The widgets we have to choose from are over here on the left. We just drag and drop it in. There we go. And then that will give us our content editor, which if we had edited a section, we would have got that content editor. Here's just some good old lorem ipsum content.
Yep.
Placeholders. Client is you. So client, this pulls your data. This pulls the current date. When talking to orgs, org info, volunteers, volunteer info. Pretty straightforward stuff. Wherever your cursor is where your placeholder will get placed. So current month just jumps in wherever my cursor was. I'm going to delete that. You know, as many placeholders as you need. Style gives you some additional interesting things you can do. For example, I might want a little extra space here at the top. So I'm going to take this top space and I'm going to increase it. And now without actually having to hit the enter key here on the content, I just put some padding at the top here. Makes it look a little better. So play with these. You know, there's a variety of settings. Some are pretty straightforward. Some of them a bit more esoteric. but kind of just encourage play with it. And that's the editor. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay, save. And since I save, since I'm doing it from here, it's just going to drop me back. So that's my template. It's going to keep my changes. Save and proceed. Now we do select recipients. The default is all possible recipients on this opportunity. I apparently only have 3 people who have emails. I could further restrict this if I wanted to, where I could, that's new, I could add in other filters and say I only want gender male. So I don't want to message the men or only the women or something like that. I'm not sure when that example would come into play, but well, okay, I can think of an example, but it's kind of esoteric. Back in college, there was an opportunity to go do a field trip to the local prison, and there was
Oh, God.
there was different there was different dress codes for the different genders. Men, it was obvious there was don't wear jeans because it looks too close to the different color codes, and women there was strong
Appropriated.
recommendations considering the amount of skin and type of clothing worn, given the population, since it was a men's prison. So, random example.
Good to know, Eric. Thanks.
Yeah. Anywho, but I don't know why that came up. But if you were doing something at a prison where you were volunteering there, then you might send different communications to the different sexes for dress code. I don't know. I'm moving on now. I'm rambling. So I don't know. I wanted an example. It was the only one I could think of. And anyway, moving on. So that's how you can restrict it down to a smaller subset. Save and proceed. So that's the who do you send it to. Send yourself a test email. Always recommending you do that. And then send button. And when do you send it? Now or on a certain date and time. So send now, send. The email is now out into the ether and will arrive shortly. So any questions there?
Not on that specific thing.
Okay. Then I get the feeling there is a question that's not quite specific. Let me finish this one little piece up, and then I'll address
Okay.
that question. All communications will show up in newsletter, so we can go to newsletter and see all those communications. Newsletter is, I guess, our term for bulk email. I call it bulk email as a more generic term. Status complete means it's done. Pending search means we're searching the database to make sure we got it right, then sending it out. We can edit and copy from here. We can also view summaries to see how well it did, and did people actually look at it, and so on and so forth, bounces, all that fun stuff. If we send from newsletter or use create new, then it's the same process with 2 important caveats. 1, we now can send to organizations. 2, the default search will not be restricted by opportunity. It will, if you don't put any other criteria, will pull up every organization, every volunteer in your database. So that's where you can put additional criteria to filter it down. Otherwise, it works exactly the same way.
Got ya.
Any questions on that?
Nope.
Then what was your question?
So my question is on the, and maybe you'll get to this, but on the configurations. So for an organization, I was a little stunned as a action center to see that an agency has the opportunity to do configurations on all of the email notifications. Like, I like that they have the communications, like the templates that they can, develop and do that sort of thing. But I'm confused, like why an agency has things like changed password, forgot username, opportunity approved, opportunity completed, all those sorts of things that the.
I think that's already being fixed. The ones like approved, opportunity approved, shouldn't be present for agencies, and I think that's already before the team to remove those. Because you're right, they shouldn't have those because they're not applicable to them.
They're still there because I signed up as an organization on
Okay,
our site.
I'll have to check on that. But A lot of those are just not applicable to them, so wouldn't do anything.
Okay.
So
Well,
for
it's
mhm.
sort of surprising to me, and I thought, well, once someone has moved on to an agency, essentially the action center's out of the picture completely because they never have to hear from us again.
That's both. It's true in some regards, actually.
Oh, absolutely, I know that,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, if a an agency or an organization had all of that as if they were a paid thing, it just seems strange to me. So,
Yeah,
but if you're
you're
taking it away,
correct.
that's
Some of those shouldn't be present there. And I do know I saw a ticket for that a little while ago, so I'm a little surprised it hasn't been attended to yet on free
okay.
accounts. So I may need to ask Cassie about that, who primarily
Yeah.
does tickets for Connect. It may just be in process and hasn't gotten pushed out yet.
Okay.
Officially, we do a monthly release, so it might be that I saw that last month and it just hasn't made it into this month's release yet during timing purposes. Something like
Yeah.
that may or may not end up in what we call a hot fix, which is kind of like, oh my God, we need to do this right now, fix this, it's really broken. So, in case you're curious how these
Yeah.
things go, there's monthly releases, which is usually new features and kind of the lower priority bugs, and then there's something we call hot fixes, which are like the we need to fix this now because this is crippling the system kind of bugs. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it may just be that it's coming out at the end of this month. I'm not sure. I'll have to ask.
Okay.
But you're correct. Those most of those email notifications are not applicable for a free agency
Right.
without their own public portal. So no, still
Right.
good question. Good to be
Okay.
aware of. Um, so the last piece for communications, and then we're doing pretty decent. Then we get the bit of choice there. What we cover is the inbox. The inbox is pretty cool. The inbox is basically an email inbox. So what happens is we can send communications, we can compose emails just like we would in any other system. I was getting a little nervous there. To either volunteers or organizations, we can select CC, BCC, subject, attachments, content, templates. These don't draw from your main templates. These are just the single standalone templates, but they do get placeholders. And we can send an email to a volunteer, to an organization. And when they respond to that email, you may have noticed that we don't set a sender email here. What's going to happen is it's going to go to a special email that um, basically will redirect it into this system. So it won't go to your email
Thank
inbox,
God.
but yeah, that can be really nice. So you can email a volunteer and it will be here. Everyone will see it. You'll see how many new you have. You can respond to it from here. Um, do some filtering. It's new. It's basic, but it's really nice. So you now have a central repository for emailing your volunteers that is not going through your personal email.
So does that apply to the email notifications piece of it then?
At this time, no. At least
You're
not that I'm
killing me.
aware of. So this
Yeah,
is
because
its own thing at this time.
the one thing that we run into is if someone gets the notification like, congratulations, you've signed up for this whatever, or there's a reminder that goes out
Mhm,
and someone sends an email to us because we're the sender
mhm.
to say, oh, I can't make that project on Saturday, where, if they looked 3 lines down, it would show the email of the person they're supposed to contact, but they don't do that. They just
Mhm.
respond right to that.
Gotcha.
So,
Here's a trick. Just invented it in my head, and I might even talk to the team about implementing it as an actual thing. Use this compose feature. Send yourself an email. The email you get will have a from email that I'm not sure what it's going to exactly look like, but it's going to be some kind of randomish user at I think funlyconnect.com, something like that.
right.
If you take that email and you swap out the sender email for all your email notifications with that, then theoretically it should show up in here. I
Nice.
haven't tried that. So this is incredibly theoretical, but it should work. My thought is
Okay,
it
we'll
should
try it.
work. Um, so give it a whirl. I mean, you can also test it by just taking that email and sending a fresh email from your actual email client to that address and see if it shows up in here. If that does, then anytime you send out a email and you put that email as your sender, it will show up back in here, including if you put that as a sender email on your newsletters.
Nice.
Huzzah. If so, that email, by the way, is kind of a randomly generated. It'll probably be some string of letters and characters at
Yeah, yeah,
fundlyconnect.com.
yeah.
If you do want that customized and kind of basically something like at yourdomain.com, it can be done. I believe currently, though, there's like a one-time $300 charge just to get everything implemented for that.
Okay.
So it's just like a one-time, we'll set up an email for you, specially designed for you, that'll look like it came from you and not be the random gibberish one. And then it
Okay.
redirects through our system as needed. So just be aware of that. It's an option.
Okay.
Currently, my understanding, flat 300 one time.
Okay.
So any questions about communications? I mean, this is a pretty simple screen, not much to it, but is the end
Nope.
of communications. Cool. So at this point, we've got 10 minutes. We can either talk about default reports really quickly, just kind of orient you on how to run them, or we can
Yes.
talk. Okay, that's what I thought. So you know, if you go to www.fundlyevent.com, this is my webinar listing where you can sign up for all my
Okay.
webinars. There are a set of Fundly Connect webinars, and among them, aside from the introductions, there are 2 reporting. This is actually CRM and Fundly, so I present it from the CRM, but everything I teach here also works for creating your own reports in Connect. So I would recommend checking these out.
Okay.
They're free, 11 o'clock. Um, I forget if it's a Tuesday or Thursday in these cases, but it's always 11 o'clock Pacific.
Okay.
Okay, putting that aside, let's run a couple reports. So we have default reports, which come with the system, and custom reports, which you can build, going back to that webinar conversation just a second ago. Default reports. My goal, I do say my goal, but it's technically our goal, is that we will have reports that will fit the vast majority of your needs. So that's our goal with default reports, is that if you want a report, we'll have one already pre-built for you. You won't have to build it yourself. With that in mind, we aren't necessarily going to have all those off the bat. If you ever have an idea for a default report that both you, your agencies, or other VACs might find useful, email those ideas to support@fundly.com and I can look into building them, often within a week. If you've got a default report that's just barely not quite what you need, like you just need one more field, once again, email support@fundly.com. Let me know the report. Let me know the field. Those kind of requests I can often get built that day. So
Okay.
because I can actually modify all default reports. I love doing it. It's like my favorite thing in the world.
Okay.
But putting that aside, how you can get new default reports added and modified, let's go into actually running default reports. So we have 4 kind of sections: opportunity reports, program reports, training reports, and volunteer. These volunteer and opportunity probably going to cover the majority of the kind of reports that you need. So this is about opportunities, it's about volunteers. To run a report, just go ahead and click on the name, and that'll give you the default format, which is either Excel or PDF, or you can hit execute here, or execute as one of the given formats. So if this one looks like it's probably defaulting the PDF, if you wanted it in a different format, execute as, and you'll get that format. So let's do, I'm in my demo.
Now,
Hmm?
I believe, is there any opportunity within the default reports to indicate the date range?
Yes, we'll get there next. So that's our filters.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let's, so different reports have different filters built into them. Sometimes you can modify the filters. It really depends on the nature of the opportunity, the words, the nature of the report. So some of them make more sense going by date range, others don't. Let's see, do I have one? Yeah, let's do volunteer schedule. This one I'm fairly certain is going to give me, is going to base partially on date range. If you're ever uncertain about what a report does, there is the I, which I'm going to use because I actually am a little uncertain what this one does because it's been a little while since I've used it. So this report will present a printable schedule, I need to fix the spelling there, for all opportunities selected for the date range specified, and will present each opportunity, then each dated for the opportunity, volunteer schedule, yada, yada, yada. So basically this gives me a printable schedule, and my grammar here is terrible. I'm gonna have to revisit it. That was me. So I'm gonna run this in the default format, PDF. I think it's PDF. and it's going to ask me to pull up to select opportunities and date ranges. So let's see here, our opportunity is going to be one of, but I'm just going to use my EKS one, and the date range I'm interested in. So currently it's set for the month of, it's a funny date range, for the month of June, from June, the beginning of June to now. So I think I have it set for a week. What is it here? Monday of current week to the Friday of current week. So that's what it's currently set for. I'm going to actually date this back a little farther when I run it. Let's actually pull from the beginning of May. There you go. And go. And so what this report's going to do is it's going to, or do nothing, because I guess I have no one scheduled in that time period. It helps when you know your data better than I do. Let's try that one more time. Let's go back way farther into history. But ideally, we would have an opportunity that's current and has people scheduled for it. Let's see here. Let's go back to EKS. And let's go back to the beginning of the year. Let's just go back to the very beginning of the year till today. This should give me something. Groovy, it did. So what this tells me is the EKS program on 1/1/2016 had 2 people scheduled from 10 to 12 and from 10 to 1 as a greeter and a tax preparer at this location, and here's their email and phone number. So this is used for picking like a week, printing up a schedule for an opportunity, and handing it to a leader, a site coordinator, or whatever, and saying, here's your people, if they, when they should be showing up and what they should be doing. So this is the kind of thing that you could hand to somebody and say, when you go out to the site today, here's your people. So that's what this report does. And
now, let me ask you a question on that. So
yeah.
if someone has removed themselves from the opportunity that maybe they signed up for, would they automatically be pulled out of this list?
Correct. This list will be real time every time I run it.
Okay.
Mind you, if I printed it, there's no magic that's going to pull it off the printed copy, but it's going to
Yeah,
pull,
yeah,
the report's going to be up to date.
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Although it'd be cool if it was magical like that, but nope, no magic. But no, our real report, so yeah, our reports, putting my silliness aside, the reports are real time. So anytime you run a report, it's accurate as of that moment. So if I went, cleared this exited the report, update the scheduling, and come back and run it, within seconds, it will show me my change. So
Yep.
cool. So that's running reports. Do note this sometimes comes up when you specify your filters. If you add your own filters in, so you may notice that I think with some reports you can, some you can't. Depends on if it made sense to give you that power. I can drop in new fields to filter on. This will not affect the layout of the report. So if my report's, a list of volunteers and all their data, if I in one of the fields that normally it presents is their gender, and I decide to search by add gender as a filter, I won't then get a gender column. It still wasn't part of the report. So the layout of default reports are locked. That's where you'd have to talk to me. But you can modify the filters in many cases. So I could drop a date and I could just say, I don't care about the date, just give me everything for an opportunity. So, then pick EKS and go, and it's no longer caring about the date. It's just going to pull me, something went strange there. Did I use a different report? I did use a different report, excuse me.
Yeah.
This one's a line item report as opposed to a nice formatted one. But it's going to give me every schedule for every day for that opportunity. And it's not going to care about date range. So you can drop filters in and out as needed.
Got
Okay. A couple other fun things before we adjourn is we can also copy default
Can
reports.
you
So
do volunteer? Can you do volunteer reports?
yes, take a look at those. So these tend to look at the volunteers as a whole. So I could get like a list of volunteers who meet certain criteria, so on and so forth, by program. Complete volunteer list report is basically your entire database. Be careful with that one; it could be quite large.
Yeah.
Volunteer list report is a little bit more, I think very similar in concept to that one, but it's a bit more truncated. It actually gives you filters and is a bit more streamlined. And as
And do you
before,
have
Mm-hmm.
in the reports, is there the ability to get more account versus, I mean, I know I have to count on my screen at all time, but if I wanted to know how many volunteers I had in, I guess I can do that just in my normal search, in 38105.
Is that an opportunity?
You know,
Or what?
38105 might be a zip code, so if I'm
Oh,
trying to sort my,
yes. Yeah.
get the
So
report
I could either do that by advanced search,
yeah,
or I
that's
could do
what
it in the
I figured.
report. Yeah. So I think the volunteer list report may even already have zip code added in. If not, we can go ahead and run that example. So I think volunteer list report doesn't currently come with any filters pre-added, so you get to choose. And yeah, zip code. Oh, that's emergency contact. Where's zip code? Postal code. Come on, there you are. And 94928, since it's my demo database. Go. So if I have a zip code for somebody and it matches, this should give me one person at least. No, it gave me a lot more. So I have these people in the zip code 94928, which is Runa Park, Katati.
Got you.
So yeah, everything's searchable. Even
Okay.
more so than advanced reports, as advanced searches in some ways, I think.
Got you. Okay.
Okay. So the last two pieces, you can copy a report. So basically, it takes this report, adds it to your custom reports list, and then based on having you taken the training or the webinar for reports, you would be able to edit it. Which, depending on the type of report, can be very easy, or could be fairly complicated. Reports kind of run the gambit between very simple and very complex, depending on what it
Right.
does. So that's why I recommend the webinar where I start small and work and then go big. So if you do want to play with them, you can always copy. And then you don't have to come to me for help on changing something. It wouldn't change the default, but it would be added to your custom list where you can modify it. And the
Got
last
you.
option is scheduling. This allows you to have a report that runs like every day or something like that and gives you the latest and greatest details. So you could, for example, go back to the shift report and have it run for all opportunities for today, every morning. So schedule name, how you want it, when it runs, how often it runs, so daily. And then on the next step, you would say your filters. So you could, one of your filters, okay, is there's function options on filters where you could say today. Since it's running every morning, it would pull today's schedule, emails it to anybody that you want it to, and you can go from there. So
Okay, great.
some really fun options available in reports. One caveat on scheduled. If you set up a scheduled report and need to modify or cancel it, sadly, I can't. You can't do that yourself. It has to be done by me on the back end. One of the few places where we actually have to have somebody on our side do it. Usually things are self-serve. So just keep that in mind when you name your schedules. Give them a name that would be easy to identify if you have to tell us to modify it. So maybe put
And
your.
does
Hmm?
an partner organization has the opportunity to customize a report as well?
They have all the same power you do with reports. So
Okay.
they can do
Okay.
everything that you can do with their data.
Gotcha.
And that's the end of the second training, and technically speaking, the end of the trainings that I have laid out. So at this point
Okay.
forward, any further trainings usually tend to be pretty customized for the topics that you're interested in. Um, and yeah,
Gotcha.
so recommend play with the system, see where it takes you. If you want another training, let me know. Um,
Okay.
this case, we were able to schedule pretty much, I don't want to say last minute, but fairly short notice. You might want to, other situations I may not have been able to do it so last minute,
I
but
know. I know.
no,
We
I'm
just
not
looked.
complaining. I'm just giving you the warning. It worked out this time. It may not in the future. I was actually happy that it worked out. So
All right. I'm just asking Courtney if she has any questions.
okay,
Oh, we can kind of hear her.
I cannot.